Four teams that play each other twice a year, three phases of the game, all the new acquisitions, and arguably the deepest division top to bottom in NFL history. And no, that's not an exaggeration. It's a question that we can really debate. The AFC West this year is one of the most polarizing topics of the entire 2022 NFL season. And this topic honestly scares me to death of how debatable it is to rank these four teams, because in all honesty, any team could finish first or fourth depending how the season goes. I see people rank them 1 through 4, but I haven't seen a single proper breakdown of everything that goes into the conversation. So I'm going to take a stab at it. Now, being NFL fans, we know how many variables go into winning and losing games. There's so many moving parts. So in today's video, the most important thing isn't going to be the official stamp of who's going to finish with what record, even though we will cover that. But if nothing else, I hope it gives you guys a better outlook. So when you go to talk to your friends, you can be the most impressive and well-versed when this conversation comes up, because there is a lot that goes into it. Like, what is the dynamic of Josh McDaniels, Nathaniel Hackett, the ultra-aggressive Brandon Staley, and the Super Bowl proven coach in Andy Reid contribute to this conversation? Who has the best weapons? Where do we rank these quarterbacks? Who has the most depth, the best offensive line? Who matches up defensively best against who? And it's even as far as special teams play. And with all of this, try and make some sort of conclusion. And yes, I will give my final 1 through 4, but really enjoy the process of how we get there more than anything, because that's the most important part. This is definitely going to be a longer video, but I want to be as thorough as possible to allow you guys to dominate the next conversation you have with your friends when this gets debated from now until week 1 kicks off in early September. There is a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. And let's start out with the most important position, the quarterback. And I'm starting with this probably immediately to qualify or disqualify myself in this conversation in your guys' eyes. And ranking these quarterbacks is devastating to me because all four of them crack my top 10 in the league. Let me show you where they fall in my opinion. And this isn't going to be a dynasty franchise list for the future ranking. This is who I'm taking to lead my team for the 2022 season for 1 year, and it's their play in a vacuum. So don't say, oh, but blank beat blank last season. It's a team sport and we're isolating the position. And if they're on the same line in this list, that means they're so close and borderline interchangeable in my eyes that you can make the argument for both, even though they might have completely different play styles. So here it is. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are the two best quarterbacks in the league. If you can go 1 or 2, I really don't care. But they proved to me last year that they are above and beyond everyone else. And then we have the back-to-back MVP in Aaron Rodgers, followed by Justin Herbert rounding out the top 4. And on our next list, we have the GOAT, Tom Brady, and then the 2 Super Bowl quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. And rounding out the top 10, we have Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, and Kyler Murray. So in my eyes, Mahomes edges out to me as the top AFC West in the quarterback rankings, but what hasn't been said about him already? Followed by Justin Herbert, who is an emerging superstar in this league. His ability to make any throw sideline to sideline with velocity or touch in the pocket on the run with elite accuracy and anticipation makes him a top 4 quarterback in my eyes and second on this list. Now, Russell Wilson and Derek Carr are 3 and 4, and with these two quarterbacks, even though we all watch the same games they play, fans across the league will argue for these guys to be MVP caliber, and the guy right next to him will say they're washed or heavily overrated. And that's why I have them lower. People think this because some games they do look like MVPs. When Russ is running around throwing 60-yard bucket drop dimes, cooking all over the field, and Derek Carr using his elite arm talent to dissect a defense looking like he couldn't miss if he tried. But they also have some games with bizarre interceptions and sometimes come up short and lose games they should have won because they're not making the plays or the throws they needed to make late. You can make the argument for either one, but there's so much context other than just quarterback that we need to get into, like the weapons that they throw to. And in this ranking, I'm going to include both wide receivers and tight ends, and then later we're going to combine the running backs and offensive lines together. Let's take a look at the most notable wide receivers and tight ends on these teams. And I say most notable because the draft just happened, the final cuts are yet to be made, and there's some no names on the roster right now. The Chiefs literally have 9 tight ends currently, and maybe some of these 5th round picks will be hidden gems, but to keep things reasonable, let's only talk about the notable players and rookies that we expect to make impacts. And let me tell you, the lists only get harder and harder to make from this point on. But starting off number 1 on my list, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the best receiver on this list and in the NFL in Davante Adams, paired with Hunter Renfrow and some other decent role players. They have the 2nd best tight end on this list in Darren Waller and top 5 in the league. Even though they might not have the depth as others on this list, they are incredibly top heavy, and stars in this league create nightmares for defensive matchup wise and allow other guys to thrive. Which brings me to number 2 on this list. It's hard to deny the depth that the Broncos have with 2 really good tight ends in Albert O and rookie Greg Dulcich. They both can stretch the field vertically, and they have 3 legit receivers that are all fast and very good route runners in Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, and Cortland Sutton. This is going to allow them to play so many different sets. I mean, just imagine. It can be 2nd and 1, they can come out in 12 set, and you still have to worry about 4 verts as a defense. And this is why they edge out the first tight end on this list. This is where I have the Chiefs at number 3. They very well could be higher on this list as the season goes on because they have size and a whole lot of speed like always. But this group does look noticeably different with losing Tyreek Hill. But Travis Kelce is still the best tight end in the league. They have done a good job, in my opinion, to try and place Tyreek in terms of stretching the field vertically with MVS, Mecole Hardman, Sky Moore, and Juju on the roster. However, they will miss Tyreek's presence on the field and the fear he puts into defenses. They fall to 3 because they don't have that one guy on the outside that can win consistently one-on-one like Davante Adams or Jerry Jeudy. And rounding out this list, the Chargers might be lacking the most in this category because of the lack of a true terrifying threat outside of Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is very good in his own right, but too one-dimensional in my opinion to needle them any higher on this list, and without having a quote star tight end. But let's finish up with the offensive side of the ball with the running aspect of the game, but also note this goes for pass protection as well. My offensive line rankings, Chiefs 1, Chargers 2, even with the addition of Zion Johnson, I still have them a tick behind the Chiefs, even though they are very, very good. Which brings me to 3, the Broncos, and 4, Raiders. Now, this is where we have a bit of parity, as the running back list is almost in complete reverse. And I just want to say, if you've made it to this point in the video, I promise we will tie this all together with some conclusions. This just isn't a ranking video, but this is all for perspective. But to get into the running back rankings, I have the Raiders at number 1. It is so hard to deny the Broncos' two-headed monster, thunder and lightning combo with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, but the Raiders' depth is otherworldly. Not only do they have a star in Josh Jacobs, but they have Brandon Bolden, Kenyon Drake, and rookie out of Georgia, Zamir White. They'll be able to rotate these guys in to keep fresh legs on the field and have diversity in skill sets for every situation that occurs in a football game. They also added a fullback, and Josh McDaniels has led some of the NFL's best rushing attacks in league history with a fullback, but more on that later. Which brings me to 2, the Broncos, like I mentioned before, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. 3, the Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Ronald Jones, especially if they can re-sign Jerick McKinnon, who is super underrated to me. I don't believe he's been picked up by any team as of today, but rounding out the running back rankings, we have number 4 with the Chargers, and we have Austin Eckler and a bunch of rookies on their roster. But now we have to combine the two, the running game, accounting for offensive line and running back. I have the Chiefs at number 1. They have the advantage of offensive line and good enough running backs to make me feel comfortable putting them first on this list. We have the Broncos at number 2. They have the best overall balance between a good offensive line and stud running backs. 3, we have the Raiders. They do have the worst offensive line, but their depth at the position, in addition to the fullback this offseason, makes me think that their running game is going to be a lot more balanced. The Chargers round out this list at 4. I think Eckler is going to be asked to do a lot, but their offensive line got better this offseason, and they're very good. I would not be surprised if these rookies can plug and play and have a lot of production, and they move higher on this list come mid-season. And trust me, guys, these lists are so hard to make. I'm willing to debate and talk about them with you guys, but this is just the conclusions I've made. But now, maybe to get into the most debatable conversation that matters almost as much as quarterback, the head coach. Andy Reid is number one. There's really no debate there. But how do we talk about Brandon Staley, Nathaniel Hackett, and Josh McDaniels, two offensive gurus and a defensive-minded head coach in Brandon Staley that has the nuts the size of SoFi Stadium? Let's start with Brandon Staley. I think he's okay, and the team is 100% behind their ultra-aggressive strategy for going it on fourth down, and the idea of massive additions they've added to their defense that we're going to talk in a little bit. Either will, one, make them more aggressive, having more faith in their defense will hold up, or two, less aggressive, thinking that they won't need to score as many points, and they're better off playing the field position game. Or maybe both, depending on the game. Now we have first-time head coach Nathaniel Hackett with the Broncos, who has a very impressive resume in his own right. He was a part of the Saxonville team that had an offense that made Blake Bortles look good. Then he went to Green Bay in 2019 and was a part of 2 MVP seasons with Aaron Rodgers. But moving on to another head coach, Josh McDaniels, and I know he had a brief stint in Denver as a head coach. He showed a lot of promise starting his career 6-0, but in typical New England fashion, there were some scandals that led him to St. Louis, then back to New England. But I can't deny a man that has 5 rings, leading historic offenses in running games, and getting the most out of elite receivers and tight ends. And he has an elite receiver and an elite tight end with the Raiders. As we mentioned, a slew of running backs, one being a former Patriot in Brandon Bolden, and a former fullback, also a former Patriot. So I'm going to give McDaniels the nod over Hackett, but McDaniels will still be third on this list behind Staley because I think Staley overachieved with the defense he had last year and is going to go into the second full season and will only look to improve. So my final coaching rankings: Andy Reid, Brandon Staley, Josh McDaniels, Nathaniel Hackett. And as I'm writing this video, I knew it was going to be long. It might be even longer than I thought. Promise it'll be worth it. Now, moving on to defense, we are not going to talk about every position group individually, rather talk about the defense as a whole and then break down who has the best defense from our synopsis. The Chargers have made huge acquisitions, adding Khalil Mack to line up opposite of Joey Bosa, and added a true number 1 cornerback in J.C. Jackson to join Derwin James and Asante Samuel Jr. to try and secure up that secondary. They did have a problem stopping the run last year, but adding Khalil Mack and Sebastian Joseph Day should help out that a lot. But their pass rush is insane, paired with how solid they are in the secondary. This is why I'm ranking them as the best defense in the AFC West. The Raiders and the Broncos, I'm going to give them the same point values for their defenses. They both aren't as well-rounded as the Chargers to me. The Raiders re-signing Max Crosby and adding Chandler Jones is huge, but their weakness at linebacker and safety are glaring holes that hopefully can be filled later in the season, or players on the roster can step up. The Broncos defensive line is also very good, but I worry about Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory staying healthy for an entire season. Pat Surtain is an incredible young corner and needs to have more respect and hopefully can only continue to build on his incredible rookie season. But they seem more well-rounded, but I just worry about their health issues and how they go about with their new defensive scheme without Vic Fangio. So Raiders and Broncos are going to be tied for second and third. The Chiefs now have the 4th best defense in the division. They do have the chance to jump both the Raiders and the Broncos depending on how their rookies perform. I did not like how they moved on from Tyrann Mathieu. Not only is he a huge playmaker, but he was the heart and soul of that defense. Also, losing Chandler Jones to the Razors seemed like a downgrade to me, and I guess we'll see if Justin Reed can fill the shoes of the Honey Badger, but they went heavy on defense in the first 3 rounds of the draft. I love the George Karlaftis pick. Leo Chenal was a steal in the 3rd round. I don't know that much about Brian Cook, to be completely honest, but I did look into Trent McDuffie, and I don't love the selection unless he's going to be used as a slot corner. I don't know how I feel about him playing on the outside at the NFL level, especially in this division. But like the quarterbacks, just because they're 4th doesn't mean they're a bad defense. They just have the most question marks in my eyes, and they will have the most growing pains coming together as a unit, and they have the most boom or bust potential out of the last 3 we talked about. Okay, That's going to be the end of our rankings. Let's recap and start making a conclusion. Let's remind everyone of our lists as I'm going to throw them up on the screen. And I hope you can all use these talking points when chatting with your friends. And I even did a live stream when ranking these. I think I got wrapped up in the excitement of all the moves the other teams were making, and I had the Chiefs very low on this list. Albeit that was before a lot of the offseason moves and before the drafts. But the Chiefs are my number one team in the AFC West for the following reasons. They have the best quarterback, the best coach, the best offensive line, and probably best overall running game because of that. Not that they're going to run it a ton in my eyes, but they have a good enough running backs and the best offensive line to pound the ball in third and short situations. And with this, I think this negates the question marks of having less weapons than the Broncos and Raiders overall. And defensively, I trust Spags to put these rookies in good spots, and they will probably be more formidable than they look in the preseason. And their championship resume is something that we need to talk about and is an advantage when looking around at all these other first-time and new head coaches. And as much as I thought the Chiefs wouldn't be number one on this list when I started making this video, I can't deny that they have the best overall team. And to boot, they have one of the best kickers in the entire NFL to pair with one of the most electric late-game finishers in Patrick Mahomes. Now, moving on to the second best team in the AFC West, this was honestly a fucking nightmare to try and decide 2 through 4. I tried to make it easy on myself and go through all my rankings and give them a point system. The points came out 10, 12, 13, 13, low score being good. They are all super close, but since they're so close, we have to look at what's most important and how I believe they match up against other teams. But I'm going to give the number 2 spot to the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is because I have Derek Carr as a top 10 quarterback. I think he's going to look even better than he ever has before with the most weapons he's ever had, the deepest running back room he's had, and the guidance of a 5-time Super Bowl champion, hopefully to bring a winning culture to Las Vegas. I think their defense has a very solid pass rush and less injury scares than the other teams. And a factor that did go into this is they have one of the best punters and best place kickers in the league. And this really does matter. There are 3 phases of the games, as I started mentioning in this video. This really does win games, and for all of these reasons, I have them number 2. Number 3, I have the Broncos. Russ is a Super Bowl champion. They have amazing weapons, 2 great running backs, a really formidable defense and offensive line. I have the most questions about Nathaniel Hackett as a head coach out of this group. That's partly why they found themselves here. But Russell Wilson is a great leader, and I do love their chances in almost every single game that they're going to go into. And yes, that does mean at number 4, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. And to be completely honest, I thought they were going to be number 1 when I started this venture, but before I explain my reasoning, let me just say why people avoid talking about this topic. They have a top 4 quarterback in the league, a really good offensive line, the best defense on this list, but I just worry that they're going to shoot themselves in the foot come playoff time with the 32nd best ranked special teams unit going into the 2022 season, and their overly aggressive play style just seems too risky when looking at all the other teams in the AFC. And I have a bad feeling when you need to win 3 to 4 games to win a Super Bowl in the playoffs, one bad call on 4th down or one missed kick can cost you everything. And the special teams and this ultra aggressive play style is really what ended up putting them here. Now, you can make a very good case for the Chargers being number 2 or even number 1 on this list, and that's why this video is so fucking brutal to make. But the volatility of where they could be 1 and 4 makes me the least confident in them winning it all in a Super Bowl, as I see more stability in the other 3 squads to go on and win 4 games in the playoffs. Now, I started this video with saying it's less about the final rankings and more about knowing how to discuss this topic as a whole. So if you take all of the same processes in this video and come up with a different conclusion, I am not going to fight you tooth and nail defending myself, because there's a great case for all 4 of these teams. And when you arguably have the best division in NFL history, it is not going to be an easy topic to cover. I put a poll out in my community tab, and it was ranked all over the board. Nobody could decide on anything. But That is what I think. If you watch this video all the way through really quickly, please let me know in the comments before you let me know so I can go ahead and personally thank you. But definitely let me know in the comments what you agree with, what you disagree with, and what would you change in any of the rankings. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This was a ton of fun to make, but make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Make sure to comment down below what you think, and make sure to subscribe if you enjoy daily sports content. You are all the best. I seriously can't thank you enough. I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.